Grow an actively managed portfolio of gold, silver, platinum, palladium, and rhodium with Auctus Metals today.
The next time the U.S. has a problem, it's going to be serious, and we all should worry. So if you're not worried, you should start. Start worrying.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Auctus Edge, where we look to give investors the edge they are looking for. I'm your host, Patrick Vieira. As you can see, we are at a very special place. We are at the home of a world-renowned investor and an author of national bestsellers, including Street Smarts, and that being Jim Rogers. So Jim, I want to thank you for inviting us to your home. How are you doing?
I am flattered to be here. I am delighted to be here. Thank you.
You know, Jim, we saw a phenomenal year last year, 2025, with the way precious metals moved up, gold, silver, and platinum. I just want to know your take on the speed of the rise of the metals that we saw last year. Was it something you've seen before?
I don't know if it's normal or not, but it's happened many times in history. I mean, 30 or 40 years ago, silver went to $50, 50 US dollars per ounce. You know, it was a shock to people. It's over 50. Again, it's now making new all-time highs. This has happened in the past. Gold and silver have always been refuges for people when they get worried. And they have been for hundreds of years. I presume they will continue to be. Don't sell your gold. Don't sell your silver.
I think what caught a lot of people off guard, I'll just use that word, was the speed. And a lot of people are still wondering what was the driver behind the speed of it? Was it geopolitical things happening? Was it a deficit in the material?
Patrick, the thing about things, whatever it is, gold or silver, whatever it is, pressures build up. And then suddenly when pressure is released, it's a lot of speed, people think. But it's because the pressures, the underlying pressures, whatever it is, has building up for a while. And then it gets released. That's what we saw with gold and silver again. It's happened before. I hope we live long enough to see it many times in our lifetimes. It has certainly happened many times in history, and it will happen again.
Well, we came into 2026, and first month of the year, January 30th, we saw the metals prices really take a hit. Silver lost some 30%. What was on your mind when you seen it fall?
Oh, I rushed down and bought some more.
Rushed down and bought some more.
Yes, yes.
That's an interesting answer you gave, because we're seeing dealers here now in Singapore. They're requiring a $5,000 minimum purchase.
I guess it's because they know there's a lot of demand coming and they want to exploit it. I mean, dealers are smart, usually, historically, so they're being smart capitalists, smart entrepreneurs. That's my main thought.
We saw the US price for, let's just say, silver at about $90 USD, and then we saw in Shanghai the price for silver was at about $130 USD. Have you ever seen that type of a price difference between the East and the West?
No, it's rare. Those kind of discrepancies are rare, but history is full of strange things. And I hope I live long enough to see many more. And, you know, when people get excited and somebody's over here and somebody's over here, and if they don't meet, the price will eventually meet. Price helps take care of discrepancies.
With discrepancies, we've U.S. President Donald Trump, he's opened up the Project Vault, where he's looking to secure metals within the Americas, I suppose, with the help of private industry. So it's a public-private type of a venture. What your opinion on this Project Vault, where he looks to acquire resources?
Well, I mean, everybody should acquire resources. I'm an American taxpayer. So I hope that it requires resources for America. But everybody should acquire resources. I mean, in your life, in everybody's lifetime, gold and silver will be good things to own. Don't sell your gold and silver. If you can, buy more.
With the US dollar still under pressure from nations looking to de-dollarize and get away from the US dollar, uh, is that another reason where this uncertainty should cause people to look for some type of asset outside of fiat currencies?
Speaking of the US dollar, the main fiat currency, US dollar is the most important currency in the world. But, Patrick, the US is the largest debtor nation in the history of the world. The debt gets higher and higher. 100 years ago, England was the single most important currency in the world, but the debt got higher and higher. 50 years later, England was bankrupt, literally bankrupt. So this is always changing. Please have some gold and silver in your closet. Everybody should have some as an investment and as an insurance policy, if nothing else.
Absolutely. And with the US dollar, the current world's reserve currency, President Xi Jinping from China came out and said that he's looking at having the renminbi to be a world's reserve currency.
Reserve currencies have always been changing throughout history, whether it's gold or silver or whatever it is, English pounds. Something is always going to be the world's main reserve currency. And I suspect you will see gold and silver come back more and more in the future, but you will see other things too. I don't know what. If you know, don't tell anybody. I need to know so I can buy more. But no, this has been going on for thousands of years. You know, Jesus Christ was sold for 30 pieces of silver because that was what it was in that time. So there's always something. At the moment, gold and silver have always been valuable through hundreds of years, and they will be again. They are, and they will continue to be.
Jim, you think we're heading to some type of a resource war where East and West, again, they're looking to get resources where things may get a bit messy?
Well, Patrick, we've had, the world has had resource wars for thousands of years, whether we like it or not. So the answer is yes, there will be more, but I do repeat that always throughout history, silver and gold have always been valuable to people. So don't sell your silver and gold.
In line with this, Ray Dalio recently came out and he talked about capital wars. And again, your take on the word capital wars, what does it mean? And do you think it's a possibility we're heading to that?
Well, that's happened repeatedly throughout history. Many countries, whether it was England or Spain or whoever it was, at various times have had important currencies, and they have often caused restrictions, regulations, controls. It's always happened. Everybody wants to protect their currency. Politicians are pretty simple people. They just want to keep things good, so they try to control it. So whatever you're thinking about or whatever you are seeing, the world has seen before, and we will see again and again.
Nothing new under the sun.
Nothing new under the sun. Put some silver in the closet.
Within this also, nothing new under the sun, we saw a point in history where the U.S. confiscated gold. Do you think this may happen again?
Nothing new under the sun. If not the U.S., somebody. You know, the situation with gold And the reason the U.S. did was because gold was the foundation for money in those days, and the politicians were trying to control money, so therefore they thought they had to control gold and silver eventually, and they will again. Whatever is money, it's the first thing the politicians think about. We must control them. We must be in charge. So, and the way you are in charge is you control the money. I didn't say it's good or bad. I'm just telling you that's what the facts are, and that's what people always do.
When people talk to us, they have this concern, whether gold and silver may be confiscated again. But more than that, also, they have a concern with the economy. They're hearing, on one side, we're trying to push interest rates down, and central banks are saying, no, interest rates, they should be where they are, or maybe even a bit higher. When you hear this, when an administration is pushing central bank on what to do you feel that central banks have that independence they are supposed to maintain?
Well, the world is better if you have independent central banks, but politicians know that too. So they want to have control. And they know that if they have control over the money, they have more power. I don't like this at all, but the facts are the facts. I'm not the only person who knows that politicians want control, and that the best way to have control is to control the money. And if gold and silver are used as money or as important sources of money, I don't like it, but the politicians will try. So have some gold somewhere else. Have some silver somewhere else.
I've heard some people say keep some in arm's reach, some in car's reach, and some out of reach. Does that sound about right?
Out of reach is very wise. But if it's out of reach, you have to be sure it's secure. Because if the politicians can find it, they will come and take it. I didn't say that's good. I'm just telling you that's the way history is very clear.
Overall, Jim, what's your take on the economy? I mean, is it, I think most people are saying surely it's going to get a bit worse, but are we going to see stagflation type of worse, or even worse than a type of stagflation, deflation?
Well, the U.S. economy has been expanding for the longest in world history, American history. Never have things been so good so long in American history. And America is the largest economy, so it's important. History would indicate that we're going to come to an end in the next year or two. At least we always have. So yes, things are great. Look out the window. Everybody's happy. But when everybody's happy, it's a time to ask questions. I repeat, when everybody's happy, especially when everybody's been happy for a long time, you should ask questions.
Jim, with the U.S. debt, is it becoming more of a geopolitical weapon more than a financial instrument?
Throughout history, when countries have become gigantic debtors, it has led to problems, whether that usually leads to political actions. I didn't say they were good for you, good for anybody, but the politicians always try to protect themselves and try to protect their situation. That has usually meant more controls, more regulations on the people. The people are actually smart in trying to protect themselves, but the politicians don't like that. So I want to repeat, everybody should have some gold under the bed. Everybody should have some silver in the closet, in a safe closet. The politicians will try to get what they can from you when things go wrong. The politicians will blame it on you. They will say, she's the smart person. There must be something wrong.
Jim, you've been in Singapore for a couple of decades already. What do you think, through your observations in time, what is Singapore doing right compared to, let's say, back home in the States or maybe even Europe?
Well, the United States is the largest debtor nation in the history of the world, and the debt is getting higher and higher every day. History is very clear that that leads to problems someday. That's the U.S. Now, I love Singapore, but Singapore is also building up a lot of debt. Singapore doesn't like to talk about it, but Singapore has an extremely high debt to GDP ratio, which they don't talk about. I once saw an article in the local newspaper saying, some foreigners say that we have a lot of debt. The IMF, those foreigners. Yes, the World Bank, people like that, those foreigners. But Singapore is building up a lot of debt, but it's nothing compared to the US or some other countries. Singapore is on its fourth generation. Many of leaders and politicians, many nations have a saying that 3 generations, rags to rags. I mean, I'm here, I'm not leaving, I love it here. But I do know what history shows, and it's great. Things are wonderful here. But we always have to be careful and be on the alert. I am not leaving. We have to be alert.
And we also have in the Asian region, we have China, grown economically massively since the 90s to where it is today. How do you feel about the way China has grown, and is it sustainable for them still?
Well, China is the only country in history that's been on top 3 or 4 times. Rome was great once. Britain was great once. Egypt was great once. But China's been on top 3 or 4 times. I don't know why. They've also collapsed 3 or 4 times. But for whatever reason, China collapses, and after a few decades or centuries, they rise to the top again. That seems to be happening again. I guess it is. I don't know why. If you know why, don't tell anybody. Let's figure it out so we can do something. But China is on the rise again, and it seems clear to me that in this century, China will be number 1 again. There will be problems along the way. There always are. China is building up debt. Everybody builds up problems. But so far, my children speak Chinese because it's the future.
Then we have ASEAN, which Singapore is a part of, Vietnam, Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia. How do you see, not necessarily just the growth, but the power and influence it may have in the world? Do you think it'll get to that point where they can be very firm in what they may want the world to do?
Asia, ASEAN, has huge population, certainly compared with the West. That has been significant in the past. I'm sure it will be in the future. So I live in Asia. My children speak Chinese because I know that in their lifetime, Asia is going to be extremely important again. China is going to be extremely important again. The neighbors will too. I mean, if you look west, you see that the countries near Germany or America have been important and significant. That will happen. It's always happened. That will happen again. Get out of globe and see who's in Asia. Those countries will have importance again. They are already having importance. They will have more in the future.
All right, so we really are seeing this shift from west to east, where it's not just capital or policy, but also influence.
But Patrick, we've seen that for thousands of years.
I wasn't there yet.
Yes, you weren't there? I was. I read about it. So it's happening again. It will continue to happen.
Jim, side question here. Since we're talking about different places in the world, You have many globes here, including the floor mat, which it's a nice mat, actually, flooring. Fascination with globes, what is it about for you?
That's a good question, and I don't have an answer. I don't know why. I know that globes are useful. It will help you know what's going on if you don't know. So, I mean, I bought a globe, and I bought another one. Now I have too many, but nothing wrong with globes. But if I need to look something up, I have one everywhere, so I can find a globe.
Jim, when you wake up in the morning, what are maybe one or two things that have you concerned the most?
Well, it doesn't matter whether it's morning or evening. I know, first of all, I know that the world is always changing dramatically. I know that the United States is the largest debtor nation in history. I know that debt gets higher every day. I know that the numbers are impossible. I know that in Washington they either do not know or do not care. I look back at history, I know that every country that's gotten into this situation has wound up having problems. It's a good time to be an old American. It is not a good time to be a young American. You know, a young Englishman in 1925 was on top of the world, but it was coming to an end. And 50 years later, England was bankrupt, literally bankrupt. They had to be bailed out. This has happened in many places, many nations, many countries, many currencies. I know what's going to happen again. As I say, it's a good time to be an old American. It is not a good time to be a young American.
That's interesting. I've never heard anyone say that before. Is there anything in your view that can be done for these young Americans to get the country square again?
Well, first of all, yes, but will it be done? No. If somebody ran and said, oh my God, we've got to solve the problem, and they won. But then, if they started doing what it takes, cutting spending with an axe, people would say, oh no, this is too much pain. We don't want to do this anymore. And they would stop. Happened to England, happened to everybody in the past. And that would happen. People would say, we don't want the pain. They would first say, we know it must be done. But then they would say, oh, no, 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 it hurts too much pain. And they would say no. And they would stop and they would change, take the easy way. Everybody wants the easy way. I want the easy way. We all want a free lunch, but I know the rest of the story. Free lunch doesn't work.
Right. Even that again is interesting because when you say like the West or the U.S., they don't want the pain, and we're both here in Singapore, and even though the government may really lay down the path that things are going to go on, it doesn't seem like people are really. They don't seem to absorb that pain the way people in the States seem to take it.
Well, Singapore has only been a debtor nation for a short time, so there hasn't been any pain yet, and there may not be for a while. It usually takes a while for these things to start having an effect. So until people feel the pain, everything's great. Nobody's hurting. But at some point, whoever you are, if you have debt and you have more debt, it has consequences. And it will have in Singapore too. I'm quite keen. I'm not leaving. But I do know history, and I do know what happens. Numbers are pretty clear. When you build up more and more debt, there are consequences. I'm not leaving Singapore. Don't get me wrong. It takes a long time. But I do that ultimately, debt has consequences.
I guess really with the current events that are going on, you know, people seem to be heated, divided.
I repeat, America, which is the largest economy, has had the longest period in its history without a big problem. Maybe it's going to go on forever. Washington says, don't worry. It will go on forever. That makes me worry more because I know that the next time Washington has a problem, America has a problem, it's going to be very serious because the debt is so very, very high and things have been good for so very, very long. So I'm worried. I hope everybody's worried because the next time the world has the next time the U.S. has a problem, it's going to be serious, and we all should worry. So if you're not worried, you should start worrying.
Can the U.S. Be okay with being a number 2 or a number 3?
History is very clear. I can just go back. In my lifetime, England was number 1. It lost that position. It went to number 2, and things were really not good in England for a very long time. They had exchange controls, etc. Margaret Thatcher was elected because things were so bad in England because of the debt. Now, things got better, and Margaret Thatcher said, see, I did it. The year she got elected was when the North Sea oil started flowing. So if you give me the largest oil field in the world, I'll show you a good time. And she had a very good time because she was smart, she was disciplined, she knew what had to be done, but she also had the largest oil field in the world coming on stream when she was elected. So life is not simple. The U.S. is going to have problems. I don't know what will save us, but I know this has happened to many countries in the past, and it will happen again. So be worried.
Jim Rogers, I want to thank you for your time.
I'm very happy, very pleased. Thank you.
Thank you, and for inviting us to your home. It's a beautiful place, and again, the wisdom you've accumulated over the years. So I just want to thank you for sharing that with us.
Well, thank you, but I've made many mistakes in my life. I hope I live long enough to make more mistakes. I just hope I can recover from the mistakes in the future. I hope we all do better despite our mistakes.
All right, Jim Rogers, thank you again. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That was Jim Rogers sharing his views on precious metals and the economy. And this may be the year for you to reallocate your metals holdings. If you'd like to know how you can do just that, please do contact us at www.auctusmetals.com.